Hello and welcome to the Overwhelm is Optional podcast. I'm Heidi, Marke, coach and biggest cheerleader for successful but secretly overwhelmed women. As well as weekly episodes here on the podcast, you can find out more about what I offer by going to heidimarke.co.uk. Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Overwhelm is Optional podcast. I am absolutely delighted to have a very, very special person with me today. Anna Senko is a garden designer and a former research scientist. Welcome, Anna.
Hello, thank you for having me here. It's a really great privilege to be on the other side of that podcast because I'm usually a listener.
Oh, thank you so much. That's such a nice thing to say. Right, let's dive straight in with my favourite question, actually, and the one I always ask. Tell me about your adventures in Overwhelm.
So I knew you were going to ask that because you ask that question to everyone. And I had to sit down with myself and think a little bit because it's such a multifaceted problem where the overwhelm came, my overwhelm, where it came from. And I divided it into 4 areas, which are my problems with sleep, so my insomnia. The other is work ethic and how I dealt with my problems at work. It's also my introverted nature, which often doesn't make things easier. And then a culmination, I think, of my work ethic problems, which was decision to switch to different career path. So switch from science to become a garden designer, which was associated with its own issues and problems. So I was thinking to go with the sleep problems first, which started when I entered adolescence. It's very common. It's not unusual. A lot of children have problems. I think I was a bit more extreme than most of my peers. It overlapped period of going from ground school to high school in Polish system because I'm from Poland originally. It was like 8 classes of primary school, and then at the age of 14 we were switching to high school, and I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep until 1-2 o'clock in the morning every day, no matter what I did. And that was not a time when we had mobile phones, computers, blue screens. So it was just physiological. And that happens to a lot of children. I really don't want to go into political decisions and how we should shape our society and school systems. But I think it is really eliminating a lot of people and making a lot of problems to a lot of children. Fortunately for me, the schools, there were more children than schools and teachers. So we had a lot of days that we were having lessons starting in the early afternoon and late morning, so I could catch up. I could catch up on weekends. But I was permanently tired. I could make up for that. So I did cope with school very well because I am gifted a very analytical mind. So I could overcome that, and I could also override my tiredness in the evening. But one year when we had classes starting all 5 days in a week, 8 o'clock or the latest 9, I fell asleep once during the exam. I was just so tired. And that pretty much chased me throughout my life until recently. So I was just like walking zombie. Of course, there were better times after holidays, after weekend, after unexpected good night of sleep. There were periods that were quieter. There were periods that were more difficult. But I always couldn't sleep enough. And that felt like pushing my brain through the mud most of the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did that affect you?
I think it's amazing how far I reached in my life, given that problem. Because I really felt tired. I remember when I joined Get Your Life Back, I was screaming, I'm tired of being tired. It was just constantly, I could achieve my goals because I was ambitious. Because as I say, I'm a good thinker. But it was just difficult. It was always this struggle, always this fight with what I felt disability. I felt like that's just something that I'm predestined to have problems and I cannot do anything about it because it's my chronotype, that I have tendency to stay late in the night and then I don't fit to the society. And then also how my brain responded to all stimuli. So whether it was positive or negative. So whether I was worried about something, I couldn't sleep. When I was overexcited about something because something good happened, I couldn't sleep. So it's like a constant roller coaster. And from time to time periods of when it was getting better on holidays, on hiking trips, after being in nature, after not having to think so heavily, things calm down. So you often talk in your podcast about these waves of being better and being worse. So it wasn't always dramatic, but I had periods, like after I submitted my PhD thesis, that for about half a year, I think I slept between 2 to 4 hours a night, most of the nights, with maybe 1 or 2 nights in the week that I would sleep 5 to 6 hours.
That sounds absolutely torturous.
Yes, you feel like you can sell your soul to the devil for a good sleep. It's anything, although I didn't really use drugs to help me cope with my sleep. I saw issues with that. But it was this feeling that I cannot really do much about it. I can just try to organize my life around that. But that's just me. I cannot fix it. That was the idea that I had, which changed, by the way, now, which I will come back to that later, I think. Yeah, so with that in background, then comes the work ethic, and we think about where the overwhelm is coming from. And also during the work that we did together, I had a chance to look at some patterns that I've been doing. And one of them is postponing things that are enjoyable, things that are important for us for a later on gratification. And I could point when it started. It started for me going from the secondary school to the university, so studying to the university exams, entry exams, where I really closed myself in the room for 1 or 1.5 months, and I just really repeated all the material and did all the tests and get to the university with very good marks on the exam. And that I think it was this moment when that feedback loop between effort and gratification started forming. And of course, during the university, it was exactly the same. So you study over the exam session, even though I studied biology. That meant we had a lot of studying all way long. It wasn't like that humanists can really party all the semester and then the exam session comes in.
Yes, I remember my first year was not very many lectures, which really wasn't helpful because I just stayed up all night and then didn't turn up. And so with biology you had consistent expectations of turning up, did you?
Yeah, we had to because and we had lots of small tests. So a lot of seminars or practical seminars would have the small tests on a regular weekly basis, because you come and you do experiments, so you have to know what you're doing. That certainly helped, but still every exam session was a major effort of preparation and repeating all the material and going through the books.
So that sounds like from quite an early age, you're getting this practiced thing of shutting down the needs of the body in order to achieve a goal. Is it because you had consistent exams all the way through? You're repeating that pattern that I think often starts for a lot of us at the age you said, the late teens, when exams become high stakes. Those of us who take on board and really hear the "if you don't do this, disaster would happen" kind of theme that comes out. That I can relate to that whole, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to really, really focus and I'm going to achieve this so that I can do this. And during that period of intense study, a lot of the normal good stuff has to stop, because we're told, right, if you sacrifice, then you can have what you want later. And it sounds like because your studying had so many small chances to really hone that skill of postponing your life, you must have become really good at it.
I think so. Despite that, I was sleeping badly and studying was hard. It was really hard. I really remember those afternoons and evenings of pushing through, being really, really, really exhausted, though it worked. And then were summer holidays in Polish university. If you did all the exams, you could have 3 months of summer holidays. So, it paid off. The problem really started when I moved to do my PhD. I moved to another country, which is stress on its own. I moved to Germany. Although I have to say I was really in a really international environment. So I was a little bit on the side of the society. But nevertheless, that's a shock of moving to a different culture, of living home, living what you're used to, leaving your friends behind, and going into relatively prestigious institute where the narrative was like, we are at top of the world and we work hard, we party hard. Yes, that's true. We partied hard, we worked hard. And the culture of that institute was also to be always present at work. No matter, that's also partially the biology specificity, because if you have a 14 or 16-hour experiment, you are at work and you cannot really make it shorter. If the biochemical reaction takes 2 hours, it takes 2 hours, but you have some breaks in between. You sit, you have coffee, you socialize, which is also, by the way, tiring. So it's like this constant being at work. You live at work. That's how it became for me, and that's how it is for a lot of scientists. The other thing is the work is never finished, whereas studying for exams is you see the goal, you achieve the goal, and you can rest. Whereas in science, and I think in most of work areas, there is always more work. You cannot know where the boundary is, where it's done. You have always more ideas than you can possibly answer or pursue in a lifetime. So there is always this pressure to know more, because there's new publications, even if you're in a relatively narrow field. The amount of published information getting out there is far beyond of what any human can go through, but you still have pressure that you have to be on top, that you have to upgrade yourself, that you have to know more to be able to do your work professionally and well. And as I say, there's this feeling that you can never feel that the work is done. It's never done. One experiment, one result, another 10 questions coming out of it. And it's also rarely things go really according to the plan. So you have to amend, you have to design that experiment slightly differently. You try to troubleshoot. That creates altogether a lot of pressure. Because
it sounds like you'd already like started to practice the thing of sacrifice for a goal, which gave a reward. And then you have another exam, practice, sacrifice for a goal, reward. And then you've gone with all of that hard work, you've achieved your goal, your dream, this really high status situation for yourself. And then that has added to it with this, what's next, what's next, what's next? And the constant, you need to be better, you need to be better, you need to be better. And it's that, isn't it? It's that constant to keep what I've achieved, to keep this high standard. I need to always be looking at how I can be better, and I always need to be achieving more. And it is that what's next loop, you know. So it's almost like the mind is always focused on the what's next and doesn't notice the, oh, look what you've done, you're amazing, you've achieved all of this. There's never any looking. It's quite hard, isn't it, to turn the mind around and go, yeah, but look, you've done all of this, you can chill out now. I don't know about you, but I found it's like I lost the ability to go, I've arrived. There's no arrival.
No, and I think that was the biggest problem when I look at that in retrospective. You never look at your achievements, you look what you're missing, what is there, what you don't know, what you possibly might be missing. So even during the postdoc time, when I moved to another institute and was by any means of the scientific community, that was a very laid back environment. It was very permissive and very nice environment. That habit of questioning myself, which is also perhaps part of who I am, that am I right? Have I done it correct? Is it really what this experiment is telling? Am I missing something? It's very important ability for a scientist, but it does not make life easier for a human being. So that feeling of being inferior and not up to the task started being really dominating. Although I was doing pretty well, I felt I'm not managing and felt that I always have to be better, which of course is unattainable. Which made at the end for me unable to really relax. So what worked very well during studies time, that I could do my exams and then I could just go on holidays and not worry about it and read my whatever books I took with myself and do whatever I wanted to. Whereas it started to feel over the whole period of doing the PhD and then working as a scientist, it started feeling unjustified, that I cannot allow myself these moments, or I can allow them to myself only because they prompt me for being more performant at work.
Yeah.
So for every holiday, I would take a stack of scientific papers to read, which sometimes I got on, very often I didn't, because I really wanted to do other things as well, not just doing science. But it would always cause this guilt. Oh, I should be reading those papers. I should be learning all that stuff that I don't know. And that's not very helpful and not very healthy. And that also created, I think, more and more problems that was feeding that constant loop of problems with sleeping, because I would have very often waking up at night, or just this moment when I started falling asleep because being tired, and then I'm not adequate. I will not manage to do all that stuff before the deadline. I will not manage to publish this paper. I don't know what to do with this experiment. Oh, I should be reading that instead of going for holidays. That's how it started to be well-grounded overwhelm.
I can really relate to that feeling when your body's so tired and you're just like, your body goes to sleep and then you're just sinking into this sleep and you get this coming out of the lovely sinking into your mind just going, and it's almost a shock, isn't it? It's like, and then not being able to go to sleep because my attention's gone back into the mind and the body seems to have lost, I call it missing the sleep train. You know, it's like I can feel myself in the evening going, and having studied a lot of sleep hygiene, being aware of the best time for me to sleep, and then going to bed being really pleased. I'm tired, I'm all cozy, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to sleep really well. And then just as I was falling into that lovely comforting sleep, getting this shock almost of like, the mind's back, you haven't finished today, you're not good enough, there's tons of stuff you haven't done, we're just going to spend the next 4 hours rehearsing it and going over previous past conversations or emails or essays or anything. So annoying.
Yes, that's it.
Mm.
Which of course drives the performance down, and and you're lying stressed in the bed that that you will even less you're going to be able to cope.
Yes.
Given that you're not sleeping, which adds to stress.
Yeah.
And of course, I tried to hack my sleep. That's not that I'm not a partying person. It's not because I have such a wild nightlife. It was partially my biology, partially how I trained myself. But that definitely made things tired. So makes things worse. I was really, really, really tired, and that feeling of suffocating under pressure.
Yeah.
And feeling like in a dunk tunnel, like with pile of stones on the chest during the night. Very often, it's like very, very, very exhausting.
Yeah, I was talking to a client this week and we were talking about the feeling that she wants instead, and it's almost like an elephant's foot on the chest, and it's like, yeah, I just want that lifted off. And it's this, you're describing it's a pile of stones on the chest, and it is this, the pressure is physical, it feels physical. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Yes, it is physical. I think I'm not having a lot of this physical responses like we talked also for the course. I think I didn't have that much clues from the body, but this one feeling of exhaustion, feeling of not coping, that was absolutely physical for me. And the second thing, it was like really feeling it's like visualizing, pushing my brain or my thoughts or my body through the thick mud, like waist deep or something like that. That's how I felt very often, that asking myself, oh, why just doing my work has to be so much fight against myself.
Yeah. So the thing that you'd worked really hard to achieve so that you could have the life you wanted, that you were promised would be better than if you hadn't worked as hard, suddenly it's like, but why is it so hard? It doesn't make any sense, does it? It's like, why would we work so hard in order to make things so hard? And from the outside, I think part of the problem for us as successful women is that from the outside, it looks like we're happy and successful and we're coping and like life's really good. And like, look at her, she's amazing. She's achieved all of this. But I think there's so many successful women who are actually on the inside feeling exactly what you've described, that wading through mud, that pushing. Everything's just, it's weird to me because I always describe it as it suddenly gets hard. But obviously it didn't suddenly get hard. It's the realization that, oh my God, it is hard. Why is it so hard? And I know for me, it was accompanied by more pressure and overwhelm. What's wrong with me? How can I fix this? What happened to you next?
I think so first of all, I had these times of dwindling motivation. Just going a little bit in digression, you said that many women feel like that, although from the outside they perceived as successful. And it's funny because when people describe me, they were saying that I am very well organized. And that's absolutely not how I felt. I felt like I'm just trying to grasp the broken threads in trying to hold them together so my life doesn't fall apart. But it felt from the inside like total chaos and mess, and it's just coping from one day to the other. Well, not the entire time. It's also important, not the entire time.
But what happens? I think it's not the entire time that is the problem. Because if we'd got to a stage where, oh my God, I'm not coping, I haven't been coping for ages, then it's much easier to go, well, I've got to do something. Because to me, when I look back, it's this has got really hard, so I'm going to improve this. This has got really hard, so I'm going to try this next. This has got really hard. I'm obviously not happy because I cried at a really weird time and only just got away with it and managed to hide it before anybody at work saw. So I better do this other thing next. And that was my problem. That circular, like I've temporarily solved it, but I haven't really. But thinking that I had, because I guess it gives the brain something to do, and it also gives the heart some sort of hope. Once you've learned to sleep, or once you get more organized, or once you get to the holiday, or if you do some relaxation exercises, then everything will be much better. That's solved. I can stop thinking it's not too hard. I can cope. And then the whole pattern would eventually erupt again. So for me, it's actually, the problem is, if I hadn't been so good at coping, I'd have sorted this crap out years ago.
Perhaps we could just break earlier.
Yes, exactly. Because first of all, I don't believe we break. I believe we rearrange. It's a gift, but it's not a particularly stylish gift, because burnout and breaking is just painful and messy and expensive on so many levels. But I kind of wish, I don't know, I've been thinking about this a lot later. If only people had told me this was an option before, if only I'd known this, if only I'd known other women if only I'd realised that those women who look like they're coping and successful feel the same as me. If only, there's always this thing for me of 10 years ago, somebody should have said something.
I'm not sure if we would really listen. That's a personal journey also to get to that point of having will to change something. But I think for me, that was also, so I'm coming from East Europe. And I think that culturally, growing up during communism, where people hold slightly different values, also had an imprint on me. And also my family history, because it's very similar in some respects to yours. So my father died when I was in through university from basically work exhaustion. So that gave me that feeling of disagreement, that this is not how the society should look like. On the other hand, that was like my internal voice. On the other hand, I felt like, oh, you're saying that because you want to justify being lazy. You're kind to other people. You understand the student didn't do their work as a teacher because you want to justify your shortages. That's how it was working for me. So it's like every time I was kind to other people and try to live by my internal standards, I would be questioning that there is some dirty incentive on my side to do that.
The mind is such a trickster, isn't it? Honestly.
Yes. Yes, that's insane. But I think it was always pulling on brakes when I was reaching this pre-burnout stage, that I could somehow fix myself, get on holidays, get breaks. It's also, I think I didn't work that horribly much. I did. So after my PhD, when I went to work as a staff scientist, I learned to take most of the weekends off. I was really very occasionally in the lab. But that constant guilt that I should be doing more was really tiring as well. That was something that took ages to get rid of.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
And I think it's also because I worked as a scientist. I really learned to rely on my logical or analytical thinking. So everything, like you often say in your podcast, everything is a problem to solve and to Google out, to hack the diet, to hack the sleep. And yes, I could help my sleep patterns. I have dimmable light everywhere. I don't use my blue filters all over the place. I don't have blue lights. I did a lot of stuff. It still wasn't particularly helpful because the way how I work, the way how I treated myself, I think was putting my nervous system in the constant alert state. And no matter what you do with your lighting or exercise, or whether you try to get up at the same time or not, it doesn't help because the nervous system is just on high alert.
Yes, beautifully said. Thank you. It's like the whole self-care, bubble bath, massages, breaks. It's like, no, it's not enough. Self-care, the whole thing is much deeper. It is this understanding of who we are, what we need. And for me, understanding the nervous system, so to me, overwhelm is just these horrible symptoms, but very useful symptoms, because it stops you really high functioning, can't think straight, you're exhausted even though you haven't moved, you can't sleep. Overwhelm is the symptoms of a nervous system which is being overloaded constantly, and that's the secret, right?
Using anecdote, my favorite dog trainer says that problems with like teaching a dog not to pull on a leash, that most of people concentrate on stopping the dog pulling on the leash, but not cause the underlying problem, which is the dog is being overexcited. And it's exactly the same with us. So we're trying to cope on the surface on our leash pulling, but we are not treating the entire system below in a more balanced way. That's how I learned to look at that.
I love that. It's a great example. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there was a point when I realized that I'm abusing my my intellect, and I'm trying to squeeze down all the signals from elsewhere. Besides, I also had I started to have a lot of injuries. I might be having tendency to repetitive strain injuries. But because I was always overriding, oh yeah, there is a little bit pain in the wrist, there is a little bit of pain in the ankle, doesn't matter, I just work through it and then we'll calm down later. It started not calming down and I started having really lots of problems with the body. It was also at some point, like if you cannot lift a box of tissues, that really puts a brake on what you can do at work as well.
Ouch.
Yes.
Oh, that's yes. Not good.
No, but that's what happens when you don't listen to the signals coming from other places than the mind.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, don't be weak and come on. No pain, no glory.
Yeah.
And you override those things and the pain starts with little bit and then it starts to become really, really an issue. And it was also a kind of a wake-up call for maybe that's time to change something. But I think I just came, I wouldn't say bored with my work because I was always constantly learning new things and getting quite excited about what I was doing at the time when I decided to do something else. I felt that maybe my life become a bit flat. I silenced my intuitive, emotional part of myself so well that I don't know how to put it in words, but yeah, I think it would be that life become flat, that I did not have enough excitement. So I wouldn't say that everything was sorted out, but generally it was sorted out. I was kind of still coping. I put the systems in place that worked, but just didn't feel right. And I think that my emotional part of the brain really made a big ruckus and caused a lot of stirring in my life and also in my private life. That prompted change, which I think I would not really recommend that to anyone, because if you're at the moment when you think that I can give up everything that I built so far, I could let go everything. It's not the best sign.
No,
it's a really desperation.
It's very radical, isn't it? It creates an enormous amount of chaos. It creates an enormous amount of added overwhelm. It requires a lot of energy. Then it requires all the emotional justification for doing something which seems not on the surface to look really not very sensible. It's not the easiest route through life. However, I think for some of us, it just seems to be the way we are. I know it's very much how I am, but it's that rebellious, yeah, you can tick along, but who wants to just tick along? And particularly when, I think for me, I'm really hearing that kind of like almost boredom. It's like that, yeah, theoretically my life's really good, because of course it is, because I worked really hard to get here. I know I've got loads to be grateful for. I have nothing to complain about. It's hard work, but I've got systems in place. It works. This is what people expect. I'm a high achiever. I've done this. And then this inside, this kind of erupting. And for me, that's the heart. We're taught to ignore our hearts, but they'll come back and go, ha ha.
And kick you in the ass.
And kick you in the ass. I know. I was just going to think that's a really strange metaphor. Your heart's going to come back and kick you in the ass, but it's what it feels like, right?
It feels like this. It's really funny, because the systems that I put in place to cope, to trying to be better organized, to trying to deal with my sleep, to just do my work and be grateful for that work. And there's like silencing all the signs. Oh yeah, maybe that's not what you wanted. No, that's what you wanted. You should be grateful for that. Yeah. So all that logical layer on top, at some point, my emotional self really went through that, and eruption probably would be the best description. It was a lot of, in my private life, there was a lot of stirring and unease, like you described. It was a bit destructive process, but at the same time, destruction has its advantages, because if you don't cling to what you get, at least in your imagination, you have room to really consider what you want to do and how you want your life to be different than it is now if it's not working now. And for me, that was decision to start a new career, which is to learn garden landscape design.
Which couldn't be more different than a research scientist.
I think there are some, I think it's being a research scientist, especially being a biologist, is going to be helpful. Also understanding and judging information that is coming about sustainability or about ecological knowledge. I have access to that information and I can understand that information.
Oh, but yes, I have absolutely no doubt that the that everything that you learned and the skills that you have analytically and there are all sorts of transferable skills. I recognize that in my own career change, but one was a hard worked for logical progression of how we are taught as children to behave in the schooling system. And the other is like, yeah, but you know what I really want to do? I want to design gardens. It's like, it's rebellious. It's really heart-led. It requires passion and creativity and huge risk, because you quit where you had a regular income, you've got security, you know who you are when you get up in the morning, even if you're a little bit like about it. Just like that's what people do. They get up in the morning, they go to work, they complain about going to work, they come home, they pay the bills, they complain about it. And then if you're lucky, you get nice weekends when you have to do too much housework. That's life. That's what we're taught is life. And you dared to say, actually.
Yeah, throughout my scientific career, I was sometimes thinking how my life would have been had I chose studying ornamental horticulture, because I was considering it at the beginning. And during this very stormy period in my life, when I was trying to redefine myself, a friend with whom I was hanging around asked me this $1 million question: what would you do if you won $1 million? And I just replied I would quit my job and study landscape architecture. And that was okay. As a scientist, I always said that the moment I realize I'm doing it for money, I hope would be a moment that I have enough courage to quit. I don't think I really did science for money, but I wanted to do something else. Life is a little bit stingy, right? to just do one thing.
Career, yeah.
So I decided to do another thing. So I enrolled at Oxford College of Garden Design for the design course, and that was another source of overwhelm, because for quite some time it overlapped my regular work. So the way how it's structured, it allows you to combine it with work, but this is extra 15, 25 or even more hours of work per week. I split a semester per year, so I did it with the slowest possible pace, but there's still regular homeworks, regular seminars. And since I'm also the person who likes to do things very well, even if they are just exercises that put a lot of pressure, and that feeling of that I have to be very, very organized, even more organized than I've been before. And actually within the first month or so of our course, our tutor posted or shared with us a system that every entrepreneur has to know, which is time organization. So he recommended to have our calendar really filled to the latest 15 minutes with how we plan our days, that everything gets scheduled. And I tried to follow it I probably did that for a few months, and that was hell. Yes, it worked. I could do that. But again, together with the way how my brain functions and how I function, it created so much pressure, and that ramped up my nervous system so much that, again, sleeping became a huge issue. So, of course, again, when I slept less, it was more difficult to cope. So I had to put those systems even more into place. That meant even more difficult coping, this ridiculous wheel of doom almost.
That is such a good description of what happens. For me, any really highly scheduled, and that's what happened to me, that my life became more and more highly scheduled, which added to the pressure. And then part of me just wanted to go and burst out of it, which is really kind of childish and rebellious and destructive. And I don't do well with highly scheduled days either. What did you do?
I went on and got really exhausted. And the funny thing that just a couple of months before my contract, I enrolled in 2019. And wait a minute, that I'm right. In 2020, end of 2020, my work contract ended. I think I got it right. Yes. Yes, the year of pandemic. And I always wanted to, maybe not always, but for many years, I was saying that the full home is one with the animal, and I wanted to get a dog. Partially because I really wanted to have a reason to go out of home. And I saw that there is a need to break my habits. So I wanted to have a reason to go for regular walks. And I thought that it would really benefit my body and my mind. And I also wanted to have animal. I grew up with animals, and I like that part of sharing life with animal, and to observe other beings around you and their quirkiness. So I felt like, okay, that's really, and it turned out that the puppies were available, and I felt like, oh, this is a really wrong time, because I'm still having a job contract and I'm doing my course, and a puppy on top, that will be a disaster. But on the other hand, my partner was at home because of pandemic. And I also knew that, okay, I'm postponing my life all the time. So I noticed that I'm saying things, oh, I will do that later. I will learn that thing later. I will do something else later. I will get the puppy later when the time is quiet. But I kind of knew that the quiet time never really comes.
Oh, you'd figure
there's always something else.
Yeah. It's such a trick, isn't it? We're waiting until there's this beautiful, quiet, calm space. And then we get to live the life we want to live. Then we get to have the puppy. Then we get to do this. Yeah.
So we took a puppy, and it turned out to be very, very high maintenance puppy who wouldn't sleep.
Oh, no.
Like its owner. She slept pretty well during the night, relatively from the beginning, but she was active for 10 or more hours during the day.
Oh my goodness.
So she would be sleeping for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then ready for action. That lasted probably around half a year. So I would really be during the day, I would be able to do just like easier tasks, and really starting my full-on work around 8 p.m. when the dog was collapsing, continuing until 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, goodness me.
When my partner would be taking over caring for the puppy, and then getting up around maybe 10 a.m. and continuing with easier work, and that's how it looked. So even the moment when my work contract, there was several months of overlap. So even when my work contract ended, I was expecting, oh yeah, now it will be easier. Our regular meetings with the course are also going to end, and I will have a lot of time to finish the coursework. I just couldn't. I just was too tired to do anything.
It's interesting.
I could cope with a little bit of work, but I think if I look backwards, I probably was operating at, 20-30% of my brain power at most.
Yeah, that's burnout for you. Yeah, we don't realise the damage, do we? Because we cope so well for so long, like most of our lives. That cost, I think it's difficult to explain to people, the cost of actually, it's like you fry your brain, isn't it? It's like, I don't know, I remember for me, it was like, I don't think my brain cells are quite connected anymore. I think they've lost some of their connection. Everything was heavy and slow. And although the normal excited part of my brain that had all these plans and dreams, and I've quit my job, so everything will be okay now because the thing that was causing the stress has been removed, therefore I will be okay now. It's really, really interesting. We think the solution is simple. We think the solution is, when I get rid of that part of the stress, I will be able to think clearly. I will be able to just get on with it. It will be easy. And yet, if you treat your nervous system with enough disrespect, which is literally just pushing through overwhelm. To me, it's that simple now. If I think about how I live now, I'm prioritizing every day. Right, where's the overwhelm today? What can I do? Oh, right, we'll deal with that, deal with it. Anytime I'm recognizing the slightest symptom of overwhelm, and it doesn't, I've made it my geeking out expertise. And even I'm like, particularly if I'm taking on a new project, it might take a while till I realize, that's overwhelm. All right, that's okay. Then I can deal with that now. I can deal with it. But it's the recognizing it. It's the knowing. No. So for me, one of the things is procrastination. If procrastination is coming up now, that's a symptom to me of overwhelm. There's something that needs dealing with. Deal with the overwhelm first. Don't assume that there's something wrong with you. It's just overwhelm. It's just overwhelm, but it's serious, because we know where overwhelm goes, Heidi. We've been here before, and pushing through it, that physical bruised brain that works so well for so long is damaging. It's damaging.
Yeah, I had it, I think, every Christmas holiday during work, that it's like, because at the university we had always a break and there was just a few working days. So if you took just a few days of holidays, you would have 2 to 3 weeks of winter break. It's awesome. And it's like, always had so much plans for that period.
Yes.
And what could I do? Just lie on the sofa.
Yeah.
And feeling also bad. I wanted to do all those things. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Why I cannot get up? And you beat yourself, and it's like, judging yourself. Oh, you're rubbish. You're not good for anything. You wanted to do this stuff, and what you're doing, you're just lying on the sofa, not recognizing that you need to lie on the sofa.
And how long was that period after quitting your job? How long did that period of exhaustion, that need for recovery, how long did that last for, do you think?
I think that at least several months, perhaps half a year. And I would say until full recovery, maybe spring this year. So well over a year until I would say a full recovery. And at that moment when I was basically lying, unable to do, well, I was still doing stuff. It's just very, very inefficiently, and it costed me enormous amount of energy to do anything in that state of total exhaustion. I came along, I just heard about your podcast, and I started listening to your podcast. And that somehow really helped me to get a bit gentler on myself. So to recognize that I need to rest, that I'm allowed to rest, that it's okay to rest. So I needed a nap of 2 or 3 hours during the day. Sometimes it would be half an hour, sometimes it would be 3 hours. And I started taking those naps. And it's also funny because the time when I started listening to the podcast, about a month or so, I had a year of episodes too that I could listen almost every day something. So I had all this information in one larger chunk, not spread over longer periods, so it could soak in. I got a letter from a hospital because my orthopedist would send me from my repetitive strain injuries, had recommended me a clinic in Germany with the relatively long admission time. So I think I waited to get to this clinic for a year or so. And when I get the letter about the admission, about the prospective time somewhere in April last year, my first reaction was, oh my God, I don't have time for this.
Ah, interesting.
Could I postpone it? Could I have it in August when I will have more free time? And I think it's just thanks to listening to the podcast, I was like, no, I need it. I need it. I need to help my body to recover. I need to get to this clinic. And I need to take time for that. I need to prioritize myself. It was a new angle that the work can wait. And it's actually also, I was so inefficient in doing my stuff that honestly, how 2 or 3 weeks can really change something. But I always had this feeling, oh, I cannot afford this break of 2 weeks now. It's too busy.
It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it, that even having burnt yourself out to exhaustion and having an injury, even then your mind is still saying, no, body comes last. The body comes last. You've got to do this. You've got to do this. I find it fascinating because I know the same happened to me. And it just, I guess for me, it just highlights the absolute necessity of retraining the mind to listen to the body. It's just like, I don't know. Now I'm kind of thinking, oh, more tools. I need to share more tools to listen to the body, because how many other people are out there pushing themselves to exhaustion? You know, it's crazy, really, when we think about it. With hindsight and that overview, it's easy to look back and say, well, obviously you needed to go to that appointment. Obviously you needed to rest. And then we can back it up and go, well, really, you should never have got to the state where you had the injury and the exhaustion. And yet we both know how we got to that state. And it's not that simple, because we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught how to manage the mind. We're not taught how to nourish the nervous system and reset it. You know, you can reset the nervous system instantly. You can reset that. You can purposely reset it every day, all the time. You can nourish yourself, but we're not taught it. And I think one of the problems is the kind of analytical Western type brain, where it's like, well, it's a problem to be solved, so therefore we'll just add in mindfulness, we'll add in meditation, we'll add in something. And I noticed recently there was a study came out of Oxford University about mindfulness. It was a big mindfulness project. It's been going on for years, and it said mindfulness should not be taught in schools. It doesn't help. To which I'm like, yeah, of course it doesn't help, because mindfulness as an add-in to a very stressful system is just going to make the kids more aware of how stressed they are. Like, it's not going to make anyone feel better. And that's not what mindfulness is anyway. It's not a problem solving technique. You know, it's not an add-on. It's a self-compassion. It's an entire awareness practice rooted in Buddhism. It's much, much deeper than that. I just find it really, really interesting that I don't know, we just, even now, we don't have this culture of understanding the mind better. You know, so my degree is psychology. We don't really understand the mind. Not the mind as a kind of whole thing that needs nourishing, as opposed to something you can study as if it was a computer, or you can nudge it, or you can manipulate it, or something horrible, you know, or you can study what's gone wrong with it. You know, it's tragic.
I don't remember who said that. But if our mind were okay, doesn't matter. I lost myself. It went along that if our mind was so simple that we could understand it with our mind, we couldn't understand it, or something.
Oh, yeah,
like that.
Absolutely, yeah. But I guess for me, we have people who have studied the mind, by sitting in caves for 7 years and just observing their mind. We have a ton of research which isn't Western type research. We have information we could be using, but we're kind of rejecting it as, I don't know, we just tend to reject it, and it's a shame, really.
It's so much in our culture, in our society, in how I really don't know where the rules are coming from our societies. I'm not an anthropologist. I don't want to say something that is not true, but we are living by the rules that are designed quite some time ago already to control people. Those in power can control those who are not in power to do the job, basically. And there is a lot of righteousness attached to work ethic. And that's where it becomes emotional. And when you're speaking about studying the mind, it is really funny, because I think it's a good moment to mention the thing about introvertism, which also comes every now and then in your podcast, because I quite early recognized that I'm an introvert, in a sense that maybe not that I'm so shy or secretive, but that being with people, among people, partying, takes a lot of energy from me. And I always need, after more social period, I always needed, even as a teenager, I needed to withdraw from contacts and to be on my own. So I could consciously kind of deal with that. What I haven't realized until we started working together, that actually introvertism very often comes in an entire package of how we perceive our environment and how our brains process the signals. So as an introvert, I don't say that it's for all introverts, it's the same, because there's also a lot of different people. But a lot of introverts take a lot of signals from the environment. So I'm one of those people who will always hear the conversation at nearby tables. If I'm in a cafe, I will notice all the sounds. I'm very noise sensitive. Too much lights will draw me down. I never realized that those excess of those impulses, and also how my brain processes it, is just consuming a lot of energy.
Yeah. I was thinking about this earlier. I was in the garden and I was feeling very, very happy. I was just having that, God, I love my life. I was looking forward to chatting with you. I was just having like a lovely time in the garden with my dogs, just going, oh, this is beautiful. And I was thinking about that sensitivity to the environment where we get easily overwhelmed. The upside is that we get easily overwhelmed by the good stuff. So
yes.
Yeah. So it's much easier for me than some people, I think, to experience intense joy, intense love, intense excitement, just like ridiculous. Like I know my partner laughs at me with love, but at me constantly. And this is a source of amusement mainly for him, but also I'm curious as to what makes him laugh at me. And I think what it is my sensitivity. So for example, at the moment I'm completely addicted to the game Bananagrams, which is like kind of laid back, less violent and intense Scrabble. And if he agrees to play it, I'm so excited. I'm literally like, yay! And yet that's such a tiny, tiny thing. And to me, that is the gift of that sensitivity. It's the gift of overwhelm, but it requires that I take seriously how I react to the environment. It requires that I learn about myself, that for me, my nervous system is highly sensitive, that, I have to deal with the overwhelm first every day. I have to notice what's going on for me, how I'm feeling before I start work, before I have a conversation, before I do anything important. So it's this kind of like, it's a double-edged thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I knew always that I'm very aware of surroundings. It's partially because I decided to become a garden designer, because I see things, I see the light, I see how beautiful things are, I see how the colors match. I have, like, I would say, a natural gift that I see those things and I can share them, and I can also now use them much more consciously to influence well-being, including my well-being, but also people who might be similarly sensitive. So for me, being so sensitive to environment is definitely a source of excitement, of really a lot of positive stuff in my life, and also often that makes me drawn to things. So I can just see it for 15 minutes or half an hour and look how the light shines through leaves. And at the same time, in the past, I was thinking, oh yeah, that's rubbish. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing. That's not what adult person in a modern society is doing. Cut down this rubbish. Now I'm seeing that as a really integral and important part of myself. And that also came to the decision that I should be having a different type of career, that I can use this part of myself. So I'm not only using a logical brain, that I want to use also that creative part. Because when I was silencing my logical thinking, with logical thinking, I was silencing that part of myself. That was exactly the cause, or what I think was the cause of being flat in life. I cut out all that nourishing stuff because it was deemed as distractors.
Yes, and
so now I try to put back that part, because that is a source of love, of excitement, of motivation,
of energy,
of creativity, of energy. You can't do without it.
No, you can't do without it. We rebel against the idea that we can do without that. That is life. That's it. That's life. And I love that you've picked a career now where staring at light going through leaves is required. It's a requirement. It's absolutely a requirement, because you need that skill. You need that. I'm assuming that for the people that will be drawn to your way of designing gardens, that real sensitivity to the environment, that's such a gift. So you have to hone that. There's no excuse now. You have to, because of who you are and your chosen profession. Now you have to stare at the light going through the leaves. You have to smell the roses. It's a requirement.
Yes, and at the same time realizing that that this is how my brain works, is really helping me to manage my work and my environment. For me, for example, as a moment of switching from work to not work in the evening, because I still tend to work until quite late. But it's not a problem for me anymore. But I often spend 10 minutes to maybe half an hour of decluttering my environment. I don't say like polishing everything to absolute specklessness, but it's just decluttering my environment, because I know that the next day when I come to work in the room, it will be easier for me, because all those things in my environment that are out of place, they're just like noise. They call for my attention. And what I learned with working with you is not to manage my time. I'm not managing my time. I'm managing my energy and I'm managing my attention.
Absolutely. Because having time to yourself is a feeling, right? It's not like you can schedule. When you had your tight schedule, you could schedule in theoretically 15 minutes for yourself. But when we have such a tight schedule, if doesn't feel good for us, then it doesn't feel like we have time. It just feels like a pressure. And it's the, how can I remove the pressure? How can I, how can I reduce the overwhelm, control my attention so that I get the feeling that I get to be myself, that I get to feel at home in my life.
And I don't know, I know that some people probably can't, but how can you plan 1 week in advance when you will need a break?
Yes.
I can't. I bet there are people who are constructed in a way that it really helps them, but it doesn't help me.
Yeah. And it's that, it doesn't help me. It's the knowing ourselves, accepting ourselves, loving ourselves. From that point, that's how we get to create a life that works, not from the logical mind. It has to come from that deep listening. This is who I am. This is what my body needs. This is what my heart wants. My heart wants to gaze at the light coming through the leaves. That nourishes me, that expands time. It's that, isn't it? It's the real listening. And I love listening to how you talk about all of this, because I really appreciate your analytical mind. I really, really appreciate it. I think your attention to detail of your journey out of overwhelm to where you are now is just so valuable. I always learn from you whenever we speak, whenever we have a coaching session. And for me, it's just looking at you now and how much more comfortable you are in your own skin. It's just such a joy.
Yeah, when I joined your program, my major goal was to be more myself and to be someone completely different at the same time.
Interesting.
I think I achieved it, because I really wanted to. I noticed with my breakdown periods that I cannot work against myself. So I have to learn to work with myself. I have to use who I am, and it's just to build the system that works for me. And this is interesting that during our work in your program, Get Your Life Back, I had some deadlines and a lot of work at some point, and was exhausted, or it's just follow this classical pattern of postponing things. And we had these audios that you prepared for us for different parts of the course, and they are all very short. It's like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes. And I was listening to one of those audios, and I couldn't get through 1 minute audio without feeling irritated and distracted. 1 minute. And that was, for me, I think, the biggest aha moment, that if I cannot concentrate for 1 minute on a simple audio, how the hell can I make decisions in my work? Because a modern day work is just a stream of decisions. You have to take decisions all the time. So if you're not fit to concentrate enough on just following 1 minute audio, it's impossible to make any reasonable work. For me, it was a really, really big revelation. It's something that probably, if I say it, doesn't really sound the same. For me, it was something that I suddenly felt, and that made me that, okay, if my systems don't work, if pushing through exhaustion doesn't work, if promising myself in the evening, oh, I didn't have a very good day, I was procrastinating too much, tomorrow I will rock, and I'm not rocking the next day, I have to do something else, doing the same thing over and over and over again, and expecting that if I just push harder, the results will be different. No, they won't. I have 40 years behind myself to show they are not different, that it's just getting harder and leading to this overstimulation of the nervous system when we are trying to, or at least when I was trying to fit myself into something that didn't feel good for myself. So now it's like, it's also, you mentioned the procrastination is a sign of overwhelm. For me, certainly it is as well. I'm very good at procrastination, I could say. But I also started to be very good at managing procrastination, because I started thinking that, okay, if my brain gets easily overwhelmed because it processes so much signals, because it's just happening so much there all the time. I sometimes wanted in the past to have this like a switch, like a key in the head that I could just calm my mind. Please give me a break. I just want, could you go quiet? But you cannot force it. So I noticed that whenever I procrastinate, especially those not very nourishing impulses of, oh, let's check social media, oh, let's check email, let's do something that is not like, oh, I want to read that book because I'm craving to know what's in that book. But this is like this distractors. This is for me immediate sign that I have to stop. I have also other signs, but this is something that I call the double trust method for myself, that I trust my brain that it says I need a break. And then I take a break. Sometimes it's 30 seconds to just reset, to recognize what's going on, to notice that, oh, maybe the task in front of me is just too big. Maybe I have to split the task into smaller pieces, or just acknowledge that it's difficult. And sometimes it's just because I'm simply tired and I have to lie down for 15 minutes. That's this. And also somehow I'm speaking about my brain as if it would be a different entity to myself, but I think to some extent it is. And at the same time, because I allow myself for those moments of break when I need them, I have more trust to myself, or my mind doesn't object to do things that require a lot of energy to start doing them and to do them, because I kind of feel, I know that whenever I need to stop, I will stop. And also when we were working together during the course, I had this very, very disturbing connection to heart, when my heart would be saying, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve today? What is your biggest dream? If there would be no pressures if you wouldn't have to think about any practicalities, what you would be doing. And at the beginning of our work together, that would be very often, I want to do nothing, which was extremely disturbing, because, okay, so did I do all this effort for something that is false? So did I decide to quit my safe job and risk really big financial instability and put all this huge effort into attaining something that it was just on the spot? It was just an emotional wobble and not my deep connection. It was really, really, really very scary. Because nobody really wants, I didn't want to be the person who is just a couch potato. But at the same time, I kind of trusted the method and say, okay, so let's do nothing. And I have very, very rarely now those days or moments when I feel like I want to do nothing. Woo-hoo. It's usually a storm of things I would like to do. So that was burnout.
Yeah.
But that was my way of burnout, really deeply acknowledging that, okay, I go with nothing and we see what is going to happen.
Yeah. And what I really like about that example is that I love the way you describe your double trust method. And I think there's so many people over the years that I've spoken to have said things like, I can't sit down when I go home because I'll never get up again. And it's that feeling, isn't it? Like, I can't listen to my body because I can't trust it, because if I rest, I'll never get up again. And what you've done is gone with it, rested, recovered, and now you can safely take on an exciting project, knowing that if you need a break, you can take a 15-minute break and everything will be okay. And it's that working with ourselves rather than pushing against ourselves that you mentioned, which I think is just so powerful when we take the time to become aware of ourselves and how we're reacting to our environment. which is obviously what neutral noticing is, the method that I teach that's in the 1 Minute Marke. It's just that it's a self-awareness practice. And you are describing very powerfully what you've done with that knowledge, that commitment. Because actually at one point you said something, you just noticed something. I'm thinking, yeah, you're using what would have originally have been an audio, but it's become embedded. You're doing it without the audio. And that's the point, isn't it? Is that you can just make everything your own, that you can live your life your way, which will be different than how I live my life. It's like, it's all about you. And I love that. Trusting the signals from the body, trusting it, learning to trust. It's the rebuilding of the relationship with the body after breaking it. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
It was very, very difficult to learn that trust, to go with it, because I had also a luxury that I could do that I could afford lying on sofa for 2 hours every day. I don't need to do that anymore, which is great. By the way, I also sleep very well.
Yes, I've never forgotten. One of the highlights of my life has been being sent a sleep graph by you as a research scientist, saying sleep before working with Heidi, sleep since working with Heidi. And it, honestly, that was just such a amazing thing.
Years of trying to hack that. And actually, and this funny thing is, I have blue light filters on my devices, and I care not to have too much light in the evening. But, I often work really until late, and I don't care that much about lights. I use the computer late in the evening, and I would say my external hygiene is much, much lower because I just don't need it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't say I don't need it completely and that the research into that is rubbish. No, it's definitely not. But it's a little bit like this example with pulling dog. The problem is, with me was really this ramped up nervous system. And I thought that it's something that is given, that I cannot really deal with that. That's how I'm constructed biologically. And I never aimed at fixing my sleep while working with you. That just came as a side effect. It came because I kind of put my nervous system out of that constant alert, and I see I'm just much more efficient with my work. It's much more purpose oriented. It's much more focused when I'm doing something, and it's also because I'm managing my energy. I know that within a day I have a certain amount of energy and where to put it to use it in the best way.
Yeah. I always think, instead of hacking your sleep, change your life so that it doesn't matter. And then you will sleep. It's that ironic thing, isn't it? When we're so obsessed, because in order to cope with our stressful life, we have to sleep, because if we don't sleep, it makes it even harder. So we work really, really hard. We focus on what we think's the problem. But actually, when you start creating your life in a way that suits you, that isn't overstressing you, that isn't activating your nervous system all the time, when you do that, you will accidentally sleep. And on the nights that you might not sleep as well because, I don't know, there's some noise somewhere or something, you know that you'll be okay, because your life isn't about coping and pushing, because there's space I know for me, if I happen to not sleep very well, it's like, well, it's okay. Like, it's not going to make any difference to my day. Even on days when I'm busy and can't have a nap, I know I'll be okay, because my life is now set up for me, not for that crazy other person who pushed all the time and tried to be something, I don't know, like a robot. That's gone. And I don't, as you know, help people with sleep, but I love that accidentally you sleep. It's just so good.
I never expected that as an outcome. That's I never focused on that because I just thought that that's me. That's how my biology is. I cannot do anything about it. And turns out that, I'm still late chronotype. I still have tendency to stay during the night late. And even our dog learned that well before 8 o'clock, just forget about any interactions.
Yeah.
But they are adaptable. That's also fine.
Yes.
So somehow magically it's that you wouldn't ever think that by resting during the day and acknowledging this really short moments, because it's not that at the beginning I really needed it. Being burned out, I really needed a 2 hour long nap during the day, but now I don't. And sometimes when I see these procrastinations, like, oh yeah, I'm tired, I need a small break, I will go to the garden, I will sit down, I will just look at things, I will look at flowers, and that is enough. And sometimes it's 30 seconds that is just recognizing, oh, that's what's happening, is enough to lower that constant activation. Because if you're trying, or at least when I was trying to push through those moments, oh, you should be more focused, you should be better organized, do you want to achieve this or not, right? This is the narration that we kind of learn, that goes back to that old patterns, right? That worked. That worked for so many years.
It worked
until it stopped working.
It works, but until it stops working. But also the problem is it works really well. And for those of us who take pride in our work and are quite private and don't want people to know we're not coping, we can hide it. We can hide it really well for a very long time, that actually something's not right, that we're actually exhausted. Until we can't. And then we have to do something, and it's messy. And I highly recommend quitting the struggle and rebelling against the nonsense way before you reach burnout, like us. But it's time that we did things differently as women, or as people, as humans. I think it's just time for a change. But obviously I'm not talking to all humans. I'm talking to people like you and me who,
if something doesn't work, that's absolutely no point. If trying harder is usually not the way, it will not make it working. But we just don't see, at least I haven't seen, that I'm trying over and over to do exactly the same thing and expect different results. Because I was thinking I'm doing a different thing.
Yeah.
Or if I only just be better organized, if I really keep to that tight schedule that I made to myself, then I will not procrastinate. And if I cut the procrastination here, I will really manage to get to my deserved break, and everything will be great, because I will feel less pressure, therefore I will sleep better, and so on. And it's just
it's interesting.
It's still the same thing.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, because what you described there is putting pressure on yourself in order to relieve pressure eventually. Because actually most of the pressure we feel is coming from ourselves, actually, but we don't realize. We think we blame it on everything else. But actually what you've described there is clear. Right, I'll push on through, I'll push, and then the pressure will go. And it's the opposite, isn't it? When we relieve the pressure on ourselves, we can then think clearly, we work better, it's easier to work with purpose, we're more efficient when we work, we rest better because we're not overstimulating, we're not switching off the signals to the body. Everything, suddenly, lots of magical things happen quite quickly, actually, but we have to pay attention to them if we want to keep them and embed them. And that's a practice, that's a commitment. But it's almost like turning everything upside down slightly. Anna, please tell everyone more about your business, where people can find you, how they can work with you, because I'm absolutely positive that there are people listening to this who either know people or are looking at some point to hire a garden designer, or to even want to have a chat about garden design. I mean, your website is just beautiful. Please just show off about your lovely, lovely new career.
So I'm physically based in Dresden. It's East Germany. That's where I can, of course, travel and visit gardens. But I think that was my dog in the background. She probably feels it's time for walkies. um, so yeah, my website is annasenko.com. So that's where you find the information how to contact me. There's a contact page in there, the best to use it. I think with the modern day technology, it's possible to work remotely to some extent. And certainly there is a possibility to do something like a garden coaching, because I was also thinking about in the context, maybe also about offering services, our work together, and also my journey as a garden designer, how I was preparing myself and reading about garden design before I decided to do the course. I, of course, read a lot about it. I tried to design my own garden. And I was thinking afterwards, after 4 weeks of course, I made my first plans that I was really surprised that I can do it. Wow. I wouldn't ever think that I can design this way. And what was that magic ingredient? Because it's not that I had a lot of more knowledge. Some of the lectures that we had in the first 4 weeks in our design school were available to watch online for everyone. So what was the difference? And I think that the differences are structure and feedback.
Yeah.
And also making a little bit of small loop of why it had been so different for me that I worked with you compared to if I would be listening to the podcast. So I would certainly get a lot of things from the podcast, but it's always that getting a structure and getting a feedback are the magic ingredients of upscaling. And I also thought that for garden design, that of course I offer the full garden design service, everything. The site analysis, making the concept drawings, making 3D visualizations, making the planting plans. But I also want to offer to people who want to design gardens for themselves, by themselves, but need that feedback. Something like a garden coaching.
Yeah, I love
because really, I think probably I wouldn't like to get a garden designer for my own garden. But I would probably benefit it I would have done a lot of things differently now. And I'm redoing my garden constantly, but it's also difficult to do your own garden because a garden designer can tell you, oh, this is not going to work. I know you love this plant, but it's not going to thrive. And you also cannot have 100 plants if you have 100 square meters. Because it will look messy. It is very difficult to have this discipline for myself. So as a garden designer, I offer that discipline.
That's amazing. That's I love that. So you basically...
It's like giving a feedback to your own ideas.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Well, I'm going to be looking into that when I'm ready to design. There's part of my garden that I want to design into a Zen garden. Just one section, because I've got 1/2 an acre, so I can have lots of different gardens in my garden, but there's one section. And I'm going to come and chat to you about that. Oh, exciting.
And I think what is important is that the structure of design gives us feeling calm and in control and safe and secure. And at the same time, we need messiness of nature to get out of our heads and feel inspired and feel connected to the world. So I think that my job as a designer is to merge these two things.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I really think anybody who hires you as their garden design coach or a garden designer just,
And also being an introvert, I think that having the sensitivity and awareness, and it's also I'm looking into research how how the environment, well, I was working, so my scientific work was on how environment shapes brain plasticity. That was a big part of my work. So I kind of have quite a lot of theoretical knowledge on that, but I also look into research about specificity of some type of person. I don't want to generalize, but it helps me. So what it helps me to looking into research helps me to understand what I have to pay attention to ask my prospective clients. What will be the nourishing space for them? Because it's not only that if you're partying extrovert, you need a lot of space for partying. It's not just this. It's just that what type of stimuli you need. Maybe you need more bigger, bulkier color splashes, which on the other hand, for another person would be just too overwhelming.
Yes.
And it's also, even if designing a garden for a very party person, I think it's good to design small spaces and areas to hide or to withdraw for people who need to withdraw. Like I learned in the social events, like for example, with the family gatherings, that I need those moments that I withdraw into myself or into nature. I can now manage them consciously instead of getting annoyed by other people. that was also a side effect. But I think I can use and create those subspaces in the garden for unwinding and really fitting the garden design to a particular personality.
I love
because it's really not every space is for everyone. We are just living in such a visual world that is pushed by social media and what looks good on magazine pages. But it's not everything that looks good on magazine pages really feels good for us. Like I hate open plan kitchens connected to the living room, for example.
Me too.
All these noises. It looks awesome. It looks fantastic. But the same goes for gardens. It's just that in gardens, there's even more variables to consider because it's also time and seasons and how the garden develops over time.
I love all of this, Anna. Thank you so much for sharing it. Can I ask for your top tip for my listeners?
That might be sounding. I was really thinking about it because I could feel like probably another 2 hours with tips. So I just limit myself to 2.
Go on then.
It's if things don't work, don't push for them. Just look carefully where the beliefs are coming from, and try to find something else. And the other is definitely get yourself coach. If you don't cope, get yourself coach. For me, that was our work together. I'm sure I would not be in the same place. I became this routine customer, really, that it's amazing. I really had lots of doubts when I thought about starting my own business. How am I going to cope with my sleep patterns, with my difficulty to organize my time? How am I going to cope with challenges that leading your own business is going to bring? I'm not worried anymore. I feel safe. My external circumstances are very, very difficult to predict and very insecure at the moment, also with what happens in the world. But I just can stay focused on my work. I can really cope. I see new ways. I see another options. If this doesn't work, then what can I try? And I learned that through coaching. I learned that through feedback. I would never get to that point. Now I can carry it on, but I would never get it without that. Because whatever you do, you at some point you get stuck. And I'm certain that in the future, I will also use different coaching programs in business, in maybe if I'm stuck with my progress. It's not that I sussed everything and everything works perfectly in my life. It doesn't. But when I look backwards, I am really that different person and more myself at the same time. And I think it's just really that feedback of the moments when you're stuck are giving that change, because if someone feels that the change is needed. So it's like, I'm cutting that short, acknowledge that the change is needed and then get help.
Thank you for that. Really, really appreciate that. I couldn't agree more. I think, well, my last podcast episode that I recorded myself was about that. I wish I'd known that coaching, high quality coaching that was very specific to me at this point in my life. I wish that I had known that existed. Even though I knew about coaching, I didn't know that kind of coaching existed. I only knew about kind of more generic coaching, and I tried it didn't really work very well for me. So knowing that it's a thing that we get to have support in order to have the kind of life that we really long for, that we've worked so hard for. I just want to thank you for acknowledging that. And I want to thank you very much for today, for describing in such wonderful detail things that I know a lot of people are going to really relate to. It's just been an absolute pleasure today. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope it's going to be helpful for someone to hear about my journey, my Anna's journey, how it felt from the inside, not how it looked from the outside.
Thank you, Anna. And if you want to know more about Anna, the links will all be in the show notes, but it's annasenko.com. And she's also on Instagram with some beautiful pictures. So do go over there and follow her.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If this resonates with you, please use the like, subscribe and share buttons to help other people find their way here too. And please do go to www.heidimark.co.uk/the 1 minute mark with an E to join my mailing list and receive my free 1 minute life-changing audio practice.